welcome back today, guys. Today we're going to be getting into the end of chapter 19. Okay, so there's a couple things that we have to talk about here to wrap up chapter 19 before we get off into our study guide. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Dred Scott case. We're going to be talking about the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and we have to talk about Mr. John Brown. Okay, so today we're looking at two main standards. Okay, we're looking at 8.59. We're going to analyze the Dred Scott versus SANDFORD decision and the resulting split between the North and the South. We're also going to look at standard 8.60, which says explain the arguments presented by Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln on slavery in the Illinois Senate race debates of 1858. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit into those. We have three essential questions that we're going to be looking at today. First, what was the Dred Scott versus SANDFORD decision? Two, how did the Dred Scott versus SANDFORD decision split the nation? And three, what were the arguments presented by Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln on slavery in the Illinois Senate race debates of 1858? Okay, so let's go ahead and dive off into it. Dred Scott versus SANDFORD. Okay, so Dred Scott sued for his freedom because he had lived in a free state, Illinois at the time, and a free territory, which was Wisconsin. All right, so we had a big issue here. Many slaves had gained their freedom in court because they had lived in a free territory. So yes, you actually have slaves who are gaining their freedom in court because they're suing their masters for their freedom because they had lived in this free territory. Okay, so there was a decision to make by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court had to decide if slaves could gain their freedom just by living in a free state. Okay, so that was the big thing. If a slave moves into a free state, is he now free? Okay, so that was the decision up to the Supreme Court. Okay, so the Supreme Court does come down with a ruling. They ruled against Scott. Okay, so they claim that African Americans are not citizens, free or enslaved. They also said that banning slavery in U.S. territories is unconstitutional. Okay, so Scott was not free because he lived in a free state. African Americans are not citizens, and banning slavery in U.S. territories is unconstitutional. Okay, so this basically overturns the Missouri Compromise. Okay, so the Missouri Compromise said anything north of the Missouri Compromise line would be free. That is unconstitutional. Okay, so it gets rid of the Missouri Compromise. All right, so there's an outcome. A Southern view is upheld. Okay, in the South, slaves were seen as property. Okay, that is upheld with the ruling in Dred Scott versus SANDFORD. Okay, so they are seen as property. They do not have rights. They are not people. They are not citizens. They are property. Okay. It also limited the rights of free blacks. Okay, because it said that African Americans are not citizens. So free blacks do not have the rights of citizens. All right, and the last outcome is that it caused greater sectionalism, okay, and it angered the North. This is what chapter 18 and 19 has been, okay? We are leading up to the Civil War, okay? One rung of the ladder after another domino falling down. Okay, Dred Scott is no different. This is another event that causes this greater divide, this greater sectionalism between the North and the South. Okay, so moving on to the Lincoln-Douglas debates. All right. The 1858 Illinois Senate race helped shape people's view on slavery in the North and in the South. All right. So Stephen A. Douglas, who is here kind of behind me right now, was the current senator of Illinois running for re-election. All right. He was running against a little-known lawyer named Abraham Lincoln. All right. He was running against Douglas for this Senate seat in 1858. All right. So during this campaign in 1858, the candidates agreed to 7 debates across Illinois where the key issue was the spread of slavery. All right, so that is mainly what they're debating on, is the spread of slavery. So we see two sides of the coin here. We get Lincoln, all right? Lincoln opposed popular sovereignty. He did not think that the people should vote whether or not to allow slavery in their new state or territory. He didn't want slavery to spread west, okay? Now, this is very important to understand about Lincoln, especially here in a couple of years when he runs for president. Lincoln was okay with where slavery was in the South, all right? He was fine with slavery where it already existed. He just didn't want it to spread west, okay? And that'll become a big issue here later on. In the Lincoln-Douglas debates in 1858, Lincoln does give his House divided speech. Okay, so probably one of his most famous speeches is the House divided speech, where he claims that the country basically cannot continue being divided over the issue of slavery. Eventually, if we stay divided long enough, we will fall. Okay, the House, the Union, the United States will fall if we stay divided on the issue of slavery. Okay, kind of a look ahead, kind of a foreshadowing to the Civil War. All right, he also believed if slavery kept spreading, it would become legal throughout the entire country. Okay, so as long as it kept spreading west, it may again move into the north and basically be legal throughout the entire country. All right. So Douglas, on the other hand, Douglas did believe in popular sovereignty. We've already seen this in action, okay, because he helped with the Compromise of 1850 and the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854. Okay, so Douglas has this track record of believing in popular sovereignty. He talked about it in the Compromise of 1850 with the Utah and New Mexico territories. All right, and then he also talks about in the Kansas-Nebraska Act, where in Kansas and Nebraska, they use popular sovereignty to decide on the issue of slavery. All right. He believed that popular sovereignty allows for compromise, okay, that people could agree. You could at least vote and voice your opinion on whether or not you wanted slavery, okay? So this is where the two men stand on these issues, okay, and this is where these issues kind of come to a head. Popular sovereignty is allowed under the Nebraska bill. Again, this is the Kansas-Nebraska Act. All right. So he thought that it was allowed under the Nebraska bill. Again, this is where we kind of see the difference between the two men on the issue of slavery. Lincoln doesn't like popular sovereignty. Douglas does. Lincoln doesn't believe that that slavery should spread west. Douglas is like, let the people decide on what they want. Okay. All right. Last thing here, John Brown's raid at Harper's Ferry. All right, this is kind of one of the last things before the election of 1860 that leads to the Civil War. So on October 17th, 1859, John Brown led a raid at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. He and his supporters took control of a federal armory, okay, kind of where guns are kept and stashed, and hoped that local slaves would join the raid once they took control of the armory and heard about it. Okay, so John Brown was going to take this armory, take the weapons in this armory, give them to local slaves, and basically lead an uprising of local slaves. All right, well, local militia, led by Robert E. Lee, who we'll talk about here in the Civil War, surrounded the armory and captured Brown. All right. Now, the raid does have some effects on the United States, of course. It further divides the North and the South. Okay, again, another domino falling toward the Civil War. Okay, so the South believes, they're worried about future raids, they're worried about slaves rising up against them. The North kind of sees John Brown as this martyr, this person who is willing to go to these lengths to fight against slavery. Okay, so we see a further division here. Also, we see that abolitionists, again, showed their willingness to use force to end slavery. Okay, so this is going to become kind of a thing. People are going to use force to end slavery. Okay, so we see that with John Brown's raid at Harper's Ferry. All right, so that is all that I have today. I do want to go back and look at these essential questions here really quick. All right, so what was the Dred Scott versus SANDFORD decision? All right, we kind of talked about that. Basically, it overturns the Missouri Compromise. It says that slaves cannot sue for their freedom and that African Americans do not have rights. All right, so how did the Dred Scott versus SANDFORD decision split the nation? Again, the North is angry with this because that Southern viewpoint is upheld. Slaves are seen as property. The North doesn't agree with that. They believe they're people. The South, again, thinks that they are property, okay, and they're not people. All right, third, what were the arguments presented by Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln on slavery in the Illinois Senate race debates of 1858? Okay, Lincoln opposes popular sovereignty, doesn't believe that slavery should spread to the West. Stephen Douglas is on the other side of the coin. He does believe in popular sovereignty and believes that people should have the right to choose whether or not they want slavery in their new state or territory. Okay, so that is all I have for today. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. If not, then we will see y'all next time.